donuts. We sell donuts.
Hey everybody, how we doing? Welcome to Blood and Donuts. I am Tony.
And I'm Chris. What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Here at the Blood and Donuts podcast, we'll start by sharing an overview, facts, and our first impressions. Then we will go into our rating. And then we will go into a scene-by-scene discussion full of spoilers. But we will let you know before we do that. But Chris, go ahead and tell them how that rating works.
So we rank our movies on a 1 through 13 donut scale. 1 through 4 is terrible, and we're not going to recommend that to you. 5 through 8 is a mid-range. It's worth a rent if you have time. It's not terrible, but it's not great. A 9 through 12 is great. Rent it if you need to, but definitely check out a 9 through 12 film. And 13, Tony, that's our Baker's Dozen tier. It's pretty rare, but it would be considered a masterclass of horror and possibly in the discussion for best of all time. Here at Blood and Donuts, we also alternate our movie choices. This one is mine. Whoever picked the movie goes first when we rank, and we are both in the dark of what the other's opinions are.
DOLLS, 1987. American horror film directed by Stuart Gordon, written by Ed Naha, and starring Stephen Lee, Guy Rolfe, Hilary Mason, Ian Patrick Williams, and Bunty Bailey. It's a plot following 6 people who seek shelter during a storm in the mansion of an elderly puppet maker and his wife, only to find that the various puppets and dolls in the home contain the imprisoned spirits of criminals.
Nice. And directed by Stuart Gordon, who we know from Re-Animator. We got that in our vault. We're going to release that pretty soon. But Stuart Gordon, he also used a couple of his actors from Re-Animator. Ian Patrick Williams, who plays David Bauer here, he plays like a Swiss professor in Re-Animator. And he also reused Carolyn Purdy Gordon. She was in Re-Animator as that nurse who just called the deaths like so quick. You know, you remember her?
Yeah, she's like, hey, wrap it up. It's been 15 seconds.
Wrap it up, Dan. She's dead already. Like, we got to go.
Oh, I love it. Stuart Gordon is, he's shaping up to be, not shaping up to be. He is a classic horror director, and I love his films. I really like his style, you know? I'm enjoying revisiting all of these, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I remember this one just from my childhood. I have some different opinions from when I was a kid versus, watching it as an adult. Some things have changed. I've learned a lot, but I'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. Pretty good special effects. I liked all the a lot of practical effects and some stop motion too, which kind of looked a little dated, but it was pretty good here. So people talk about stop motion and they might say dated. I enjoy revisiting like 80s films and where you see the stop motion, because it is like a lost art. You see a lot of that in like Nightmare Before Christmas. You see it in Beetlejuice, like the original one. And Tim Burton said he's going to bring it back in the sequel that's coming up, because people are getting tired of CGI. CGI just doesn't have the charm and that some of the stop motion does. And Dolls extensively uses stop motion animation in this film. The stop motion animations done by David W. Allen, who did work on Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the Puppet Master movies, and Ghostbusters 2. I just think there's something special about those movies from the 1980s that used like actual puppets, and suits like the Ninja Turtles and the Jim Henson and like the Labyrinth and stuff like that, and then the stop motion as well. And I know this is like this film is like it's a little bit more hardcore than a kid's film, but at the same time, growing up in the 80s and early 90s, we had some hardcore films. I mean, you think about like Ghostbusters, Beetlejuice, Indiana Jones, the Goonies, Gremlins. You know what I mean? These films are hard. We had some hardcore. They just thought kids were just like, we could handle anything. And this did get an R rating because you have that Stuart Gordon touch to it. But this is definitely a fairy tale horror film. This is like Hansel and Gretel. Yeah, and that's quite the resume that guy had from the special effects. That's a crazy catalog that he had.
Yeah.
And yes, speaking of kids, you have like a really young child actor here, named Carrie Lorraine. She plays Judith, and they actually had her watch Bunty Bailey put on her makeup for her death scene, to ensure that she wasn't traumatized when she saw her the first time. It's not like in It where they like scared the kids and they like got the real reaction. It's not like that. They were a little kinder back in the 80s.
That's another one. We were watching It when we were kids. What were we doing watching It?
Our parents were asleep, I guess.
How about Pet Cemetery? Like that's a traumatizing film, and like the end sequences when you see, is it the sister in bed, and she's like sick and stuff?
I think so. Yeah.
Like that's crazy stuff. I watched that was an introductory horror film when you were a child. They were like, here are you, like, here you're 7 now, go watch Pet Cemetery. You know what I mean? Like, so we watched Pet Cemetery.
Sitting our kids in front of Dora, and we were getting set in front of like Nightmare on Elm Street.
I'm over here like, do y'all think y'all would like Mickey's Pumpkin Halloween? And that we were sitting here watching this. We were watching Dolls in 1987, and it's crazy, man. It's just a different time. The tagline for this film, are you ready, Chris? They walk, they talk, they kill. I thought that was funny.
But hey, the art for it, that looks pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
You got the doll with the eyes.
Oh, yeah. I loved it. I loved it. I have my dolls from my childhood here. Nice. I have brought, like, how creepy is Howdy Doody? I still have him in the box. My dad got me this Beetlejuice doll from when I was a kid as well. So I just... You don't hear about dolls that much anymore, other than like a Barbie or like an American, American doll. But we had like My Buddy and stuff like that. Dolls were everywhere.
I was about to mention that. I had a My Buddy too, and he got kicked in the face a lot. But Child's Play came out in 1988.
Yes,
1 year after this movie. So it's kind of like in that late 80s, they were just kind of experimenting with that kind of horror, Wow. And I still like this movie.
Yeah. This film was shot in Italy at Empire Studios prior to the making of Gordon's From Beyond, which came out in 1986. And he's really famous from not only Re-Animator, but From Beyond. Mm-hmm. And so they released this one. This one went unreleased until 1987, and it premiered at the Seattle International Film Festival.
I think it's because it took them a long time to get all the stop motion stuff edited, and they had to get all that stuff done. So I think he was finished recording it before that other movie released, and then it released after. So just because it took so long in editing. Yeah,
it seemed like Stuart Gordon was a busy man. He had a lot of projects up in the air, not just only horror, but we talked about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids earlier. He didn't direct Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but he wrote the idea. He wrote that story. The original story for Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. That is a Stuart Gordon. He wrote that. So he was
it sounds like you're saying he's a national treasure.
He unfortunately he did die in 2020. We saw that in March, but I know. Re-Animator though, right? Am I right?
Re-Animator is so good, yeah.
The castle used in the 1987 film Dolls is located in Italy. Specifically, it is Castle, I guess if it's Italian, this would be Attajano or Attajano, Castle Assagiano. That's what I'm going to go with.
Sounds right.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
I don't have any more facts. Do you want me to go ahead and jump into my pros and cons?
Oh, please do. Let's hear it.
All right. So I enjoyed the casting, particularly Gabriel played by Guy Rolfe, and Ralph, the kind of lovable, teddy bear guy, played by Stephen Lee, and he looks like a grown up like Sean Astin, right, from Goonies.
He does.
He looks like him.
He does.
I did like the stop motion and the practical effects. I still enjoyed. I appreciated the scares. They're still pretty good to me. There one scene in particular with the toy soldiers that has been in my head for 25 years.
Yeah.
And the music, there was some pretty good music in this one. The cons, some of the. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. It was almost like an orchestra. You know what I mean? You would think 1987. Yeah, 1987. You would think it would be like electronica type of stuff, but you got like a lot of string instruments and stuff like that. And I'm sorry, go ahead. I caught that. I was just like, man, they used a lot of orchestral pieces for this little horror film from 1987.
And it paired well with the scenery and the cinematography, where they're just in this old castle and all that kind of stuff. So it was pretty good. Like I said, some of the cons, the story's lacking a little bit. I think you talked about that in our blooper reel. Some of the effects have aged a little bit. For me, I'm going to go with an 8 out of 13 donuts. It's upper mid for me. I would still recommend it. As you know, I saw this movie when I was a kid, probably 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
The kid in me was terrified of the kills. The adult in me still finds them pretty good, and I appreciate the other aspects of the film. Like there's some funny humor, some goofiness, a charm, and it's pretty quaint. It's a quaint film, and like you said, even a kid would kind of like it. It's almost like a feel good story, but in a kind of scary way there towards the end.
Absolutely. I agree. I agree with a lot of what you said. Stuart Gordon's directorial style, it really shines through, especially at the, I love the beginning of this. They're getting stuck in the mud, and we'll talk about it in the spoilers, but they're getting stuck in the mud. And then her teddy bear comes back to life. And I was like, this is what Imaginary should have been. You know what I mean? Wasn't that better than Imaginary? That teddy bear coming to life.
Scene,
that one scene coming out and she's like, it's kind of funny. She was like, oh, Teddy, no. And Teddy goes, I love that. Yeah, he just held his hands up like, what? And and that was just her imagination running wild. Anyway, so you just see like a Stuart Gordon style there, and I really enjoyed this. This had a runtime of I believe like an hour and 19 minutes. Like you just never hear about that anymore. I mean, every film that we watch, I swear it's 2 hours long. Even horror films. So when you watch these Stuart Gordons, you're like, man, Re-Animator was an hour and a half. This is an hour and 20 minutes. And whereas I think that I thought it was a good length for this. You know what I mean? Because I don't know. It's kind of like a fantasy, and like you said, some of the cons. I think the story was lacking in places, and I feel like it was a little. It felt out of place. The feel goods scenes, you know what I mean? Like it was kind of like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids meets horror film, and just like it's so gory and crazy, and that's Stuart Gordon, but then it's almost like a PG. It's like PG meets R, and it really, I was like, and I was watching, I was like, who is this made for? And I guess at the end of the day, this was made to frighten children. It was made to frighten teenagers, and it was for horror fans. And so I thought it was great in that aspect. Yeah, it was I did not like the Madonna girls from the 1980s. You know what I mean? Like their acting was a little over the top. So when I say this movie was it's dated, I would say they're the reason it's dated. Everything else is timeless. I love the castle. I love the elderly, the Hansel and Gretel couple. You know what I mean? I thought they were great, and just seasoned actors and actresses and stuff. And even the little girl did great. The parents made me absolutely hate them, so I thought they did well. And again, I like the stop motion, I like the puppets. I thought it was charming in that. I am going to recommend this to our audience and horror fans, and I think you should watch this if you haven't watched it yet. I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 13 donuts. I think it's a good film. It's up there with Gremlins and stuff of the such. Maybe Gremlins slightly better, but I think it's of that same vein. Yeah. I agree.
I agree with that.
Okay. So, hey, if you haven't seen Dolls, it is free on Tubi. I am so surprised of the free stuff that is on Tubi. Seriously, everything that we've had to like go out and find, we are just picking these. I don't know where they're from. We don't care about paying for it, but it's so nice there's a Tubi for some reason has a treasure trove of horror films, doesn't it, Chris?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, I'm going to have to look there first instead of renting stuff for $4. But and hey, if you do want to set your kids in front of this, it's not over the top. I mean, it is kind of gory, but there is a little bit of a nip slip in there, so it's very brief nudity.
I didn't see that.
If you wanted to sit this in front of your 13, 14-year-old or something, it's totally fine.
There's a nip. I did not even catch the nip slip. Did you rewind and pause multiple times, Chris?
I knew where it was. I timestamped it, and
you knew it from when you were a kid and you saw this.
Why do you think I picked this one?
You like Dolls nip slip at 27:33.
Right. That's pretty close to where it is, actually.
All right, let's go through. We're gonna spoil this thing.
Let's do it.
Here come the spoils. Violent thunderstorm strands young Judy, her father David, and her evil stepmother Rosemary. Oh my gosh. In the English countryside. Seeking shelter, the trio break into a nearby mansion where they meet the owners, a kindly older couple named Gabriel and Hilary Hartwick. Learning that Judy has lost her beloved stuffed bear, Teddy. In fact, the cruel Rosemary threw Teddy into the bushes. Gabriel gives Judy a doll named Mr. Punch. 3 more people arrive at the mansion, also seeking shelter from the storm. Good-natured American businessman Ralph and English hitchhikers Isabel and Enid. I forgot.
Enid,
what is it? Enid? Is that what they say? Gabriel invites them all to stay the night. Of course, Gabriel does. He's a sweet man.
Dude, and that's my favorite character. I feel like I want to watch anything he's been in. Like, he was just really good in this role.
And his eyes.
Yeah.
There's like, I was just like,
and the way he's, both him and, Hillary in this movie, they both show a wide range of emotions. Like, they're caring for Judy, they're kind to Ralph, they're short with David and Rosemary, and they're like cautious of the hitchhikers. So there's a lot of stuff that they do that really just, and you can tell like who's good and who's bad right off the bat. You already know who you want to see get killed. And like you said, you can tell these parents are just the worst. Oh, the worst a-holes on the planet.
And it like it starts off. They're driving in this very nice car, not and it's not a Rolls Royce. He makes that very clear a little bit later. But they're driving, and it starts just storming. And they're calling the daughter in the back like this little twerp, this little, you can tell the stepmother really hates her. And he talks about his ex-wife and all this stuff. His ex-wife is living in Boston, I believe, and she seems to be a pretty stand-up woman, right?
Well, I mean, she's better than this jerk.
Yeah. And he married her for money, apparently. She's very wealthy, and because they talk about that at one point. But then they get stuck in the mud, and he has to get out and push, and she's just like, I'm not going to get out and push, kind of thing. And he's like, couldn't you have got the Rolls Royce instead? And then the little girl in the back's talking to Teddy, and then they all have to get out because there's a huge castle, creepy mansion off in the distance. And so they get out, and for some reason, it made no sense, but she just throws her little teddy bear in the bushes. She said, it's better, it's going to slow you down. The stepmother does. And it was just like the rudest, like it was uncalled for. She was just doing it to be pure evil and mean,
Yeah, she definitely was. And
but
even the dad is a jerk to Judy.
Oh yeah.
He's like, I wish she was back with her mom and stuff like that. And he gets her for like the summers apparently. So he's the worst. He just hates it.
I hate him. Yeah. I hate him. I hate both of them. But
they die in this movie.
But like we said, Judy has these weird imaginations, these horror imaginations, and they go ahead and set this up pretty early because after her stepmom throws Teddy grows about 6 feet tall, comes out of the forest, rips off his Teddy puffed cotton outfit, and turns into like a huge grizzly monster, and just rips her parents to shreds. And Judy just stands there and says, "Oh, Teddy." And Teddy's like, "I had to do it." It's so funny.
What am I supposed to do?
I was sitting there by myself just laughing. And at the same time, I was like, this is imaginary right here. Yeah, that awful Blumhouse movie that we watched. But man, that was better.
Other than that toy soldier scene that I mentioned, this is the other scene that I like vividly remembered, from watching it as a kid. So
yeah,
that's definitely pretty lasting scene there. It's pretty good.
They wanted to set up that Judy had a imagination, and that we are not going to believe her multiple times when she goes in there and says that there's little people and toys wreaking havoc throughout this house.
Yeah.
And so they go in, they meet this elderly couple. No, they go in through like a side door or something like that. And
they go through the basement.
Yeah, that's what it is. And then the old people, they find him and stuff like that. And at some point,
him with a shotgun.
Oh, that's what it was.
He's got a gun on him.
Yeah, he's like, we like our visitors to come through the front door.
Yeah, as much as we like people, we like them to use the front door.
But it's really cool. They're really nice people, and they say stay for dinner. You got plenty of room here. And then they like talk. At one point, they were talking about the occupation, what they do for a living, and then the parents joke and say witchcraft, and then the elderly couple laugh like. They laughed like it was so funny, and they thought that was hilarious. It
turned out to be true.
Yeah, it was very true. So they stayed the night. I love that point. And so it does talk about Ralph and those British hitchhikers. Which, by the way, Judy's parents tried to run off the road earlier. They almost ran him over. And he's like, "You almost ran them over." She goes, "Do you want me to turn around and hit them for
Try
real
it again?"
Yeah. So anyway, like Ralph and these hitchhikers just kind of like hop in the kitchen. They just kind of bust in, don't they?
Yeah, they do use the front door, and they're all soaked, and the hitchhikers, you can tell they're just trying to nick his wallet.
They're trying to nick his wallet.
Yeah, it's pretty. They're really over the top.
Ralph was just being a sweet dude, and he picked up these British Madonna looking 80s. Like they look like they belong in New Year's Evil at that party, don't they? New Year's Evil. Yes.
While Madonna is playing there,
yes,
they're her biggest fans.
But these British girls, like in their room, they're just like plotting, like when they're asleep. I think we'll go down there and we'll just steal everything that they have of any value. They are just always thinking about how they're going to steal something, and they're plotting in that regard. Basically, the movie's just setting them up to get killed. That's what I was seeing there. I was like, oh, okay,
for sure.
So all four of those will die. Okay, that's what I was saying. Judy soon discovers that the mansion is full of beautifully detailed toys and dolls, like Mr. Punch. Gabriel explains that he and his wife are toy makers. Judy and Ralph are both overjoyed, and the latter is something of a child at heart who has never given up his love and fondness of toys. Isabel and Enid are actually petty thieves who hitchhike with Ralph, intending to pick his pocket. That night, Isabel sneaks out of her room to rob the mansion. Instead, she is brutally attacked by dolls who caught her in the midst of her thievery, who then drag her into the darkness, having rammed her repeatedly into the wall. Just like...
And it's a pretty cool effect. I didn't think about it until I seen it, but when she's like face down on the floor and then her hands are out, and then she like rotates... like 180 degrees, like without coming out. That's a pretty cool effect, I think.
Yeah, I thought so too.
And I think the moral of this movie should be, if your grandparents have a bunch of old dolls, just pretend that you like them.
Yes.
So they won't turn you into one.
I think that's
what I kind of get.
Yeah, absolutely. Why would you? Why would you not? Oh, you look great.
Yeah.
Oh, I love them. Dolls are so creepy. You know what I mean? I mean, they've been creepy.
Yeah.
I mean, always. I mean, come on. This is before. This is 10 years before they would come out with a movie called Toy Story, where the toys would actually come alive when you went to sleep. And Ralph actually talks about this. That his parents would tell them the story. He said my dad would say that when I went to sleep that my toys would get up and walk around. This is made 10 years before that ever came out, guys.
So we should probably rank this as a 13, and because it's just such an inspiration to films like Child's Play, Megan, Toy Story.
When did Puppet Master come out? That's what I need to know. There was like 4 of those. You know, that probably came out pretty soon after this.
And I want to say that one of these actors or actresses was in Puppet Master.
Well, we just read that the same guy who did the stop motion for this film did it for Puppet Master as well. So that's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Puppet Master film series came out in 1989.
2 years after this. It probably saw a little bit more success than this did.
Charles Band was a producer.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Puppet Masters. There's like 3, 4. I've seen so many of those.
There's 5.
Those are very risque when you get in. Some of those are a little.
So rent those on YouTube and not Amazon, is what you're saying,
Chris.
Gotcha.
When she's going through in the house and stealing things, it was a little overdone with it. She was like, did you see that? Like when she had a brush and then like she took a frame and she kind of like.
I also just liked how she had so much jewelry on and left her high heels on.
Yeah.
She's like the loudest thief ever. Like she's like walking through like jangling.
Well, the elderly couple said, "Don't worry. Can we play our music? Can we blast our music loud?" And they're like, "We will never hear you. We'll be on the other side of the house." Of course, go for it. And basically, they're setting them up to get murdered, which I enjoyed that too. Yeah. Judy in the hallway briefly sees the attack and she rushes to tell her father, David. However, David is a neglectful and uncaring father. Dang. Both he and Rosemary refuse to believe that Judy for making up stories. She makes up stories all the time, Instead, Judy convinces Ralph to check out the hallway with her. Ralph initially is very skeptical, but he eventually begins believing Judy after her Mr. Punch doll briefly speaks to them.
Mr. Punch, he had a creepy vibe about him.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. When Gabriel handed her Mr. Punch in place of Teddy, I wanted her to go, "Can I have something else instead of this?"
Do you have like a fairy or something?
Yeah, can you give me like a girl dolly? Mr. Punch is the
Barbie,
creepiest thing I have ever seen in my entire life.
It's like a jester that looks really evil, has an evil grin.
Yes.
But you do really start to kind of root for Judy and Ralph. I think at this point, you assume that like nothing is going to happen to those two, right?
Oh yeah.
Like Ralph has a chance to be. I think he even gets bit later, but you still kind of like root for him. Like Judy's not going to die, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, but yeah. Anyway, you kind of start to root for them, and I just love the just the castle aspect. I mean, this isn't it like it looks like a castle. And like the power's out or whatever, I want to start using candles, like a stick of 5 or 6 candles just to light
just to go around in the hallway.
Going through my house.
At one point, one of these girls, these British girls, one's holding a Zippo lighter, and she's holding it for so long. I was like, "How hot is this Zippo lighter getting?" Like if you just happened to like touch it up there, it would have been over with.
Yeah.
It would have been crazy. But so you get the girl who's getting her head's getting cracked into the wall, and then she gets in the hallway, and then Judy comes out, sees her in a puddle of blood, and the girl's like, "Help me," and Judy's like, "I don't know," and she kind of she sees her getting dragged off by. She don't get to see that the dolls are doing it. She sees that something is happening, and she assumes it's the dolls, maybe. I don't know. But she goes and she tries to convince Ralph, and Ralph's like, "I'm going to sleep, and you're a little girl. Get out of my room. What's going on?" But then he looks down, and her house shoes are soaked with blood.
Mm-hmm. So then he's like, "Hey, yeah,
And then
what are you talking about?"
He gets up, he starts investigating things, and he starts seeing some weird things happen, including Mr. Punch and just out of the corner of his eye and stuff like that. It's crazy. Rosemary,
hey. Yeah, Gabriel has a good excuse for that. He says,
I was painting.
Paint.
I was just painting up there. Don't tell my wife." No, he didn't say that. He didn't say that. Don't tell my wife. No, he said, "Don't tell my wife. I was painting dolls up there, the cheeks, the red paint, and I spilt a whole bucket everywhere." Oh, foolish me. What was I thinking?
I loved him.
Yeah, he was great. Rosemary is later attacked by the dolls. In the midst of escaping them, she ends up accidentally leaping out of a window to her death. Can we talk about that scene real quick for a second?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. So that was a great death, right? This is the evil stepmother that you hate so much, and she's like sitting there in bed, and all of a sudden her blanket starts popping up through the comforter. You see it, like, and then she opens it up, and there's like 5 or 6 dolls there, right? And
like 20 dolls.
Oh, and one's like holding a knife, and they just start stabbing her and jumping, and it's one of the coolest things. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is nuts. Yeah. But I mean, these dolls are getting just a little bit of damage, but there's a lot of them, so they're getting a little bit at time, and she's kind of fighting them off the best that she can, and then at one point she sees them, like she walks to the staircase, and here's a bunch of them on this side, and then she walks to another side of the staircase. There's a bunch on this side, and she goes, "Forget this, I'm just going to jump over," and she like runs, jumps, clear out the window. It's kind of goofy. You're just like, what just happened, you know? But it was still funny. But I laughed at it.
And I think you could overly tell that the glass was like pre-shattered or something. It's in one of like the goofs I was reading on IMDb.
Oh, you could tell.
You could tell it was already cracked.
I couldn't tell, but I bet on a rewatch I would be like, oh man,
yeah,
come on. That I love. Like, again, I mean, what movie doesn't have those? And like the more of a fan that you are, the more that you can identify those, and it's hilarious. Enid searches for Isabel and finds her almost entirely transformed into a doll version of herself. A horde of toys, including actual projectile shooting soldier figurines, attack. They kill Enid. That's the one that you were talking about earlier, as she attempts to fight them off and escape. Meanwhile, Ralph gets accidentally caught in a trap. The dolls set for the other adults before Judy convinces them to save him, because he is her friend and has done nothing wrong.
I like the parentheses. They're just explaining stuff for the person who's not really following along. It's like, and that means,
and then
friends.
This means that they were friends, Tony. David discovers Rosemary's dead body placed in a bed and believes that Ralph killed her.
All right, so real quick on that point, I like how he gets in bed and he's trying to like smooch up to her.
Oh yeah,
and then he like smells his pits and he's like, I should go take a shower.
Yeah, I should probably go take a shower.
And he comes back and he's like slapping aftershave on his face.
Yeah, he's ready to go.
Gonna climb in bed.
Oh yeah, he's gonna get him some rosemary, isn't he?
And then he turns her over, and it's cool. Like the blanket is bleeding. You can see it a little bit.
The audience can see it, but he cannot. Yeah, so it's like it's just over here on this side. So you're just like, oh, this is about to come and not going to be good.
And then when he turned her over, it looked like her eyes were just out of her head or something. That was pretty crazy.
Same thing with that Madonna British girl upstairs. Like her friend finds her in a closet, and she's like, "Run! Don't!" What'd she say? She's
like saying, "Don't come here, run."
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw it, but before that, when I think Judy and Ralph were in the attic, it like a lightning flash, and you could see the Madonna doll in the background.
Yes.
But nothing happened. Like it was just a flash scare. Pretty good. I never remembered that, but yeah. And then her eyes fall out and she puts them back in and stuff like that.
Yeah. So there's almost like with this couple, like these witches, this witch couple, I guess, in this castle, they kind of like these bad people. It said criminals earlier, but I guess not necessarily criminals, just bad, evil people, whoever they want this to happen to. But they transition into dolls, you know, some quicker than others, but like I just love that creepy aspect. She had like these fake doll eyeballs, and you know, and then she's turned around, they just fell out. It was I don't know, it's just a good creepy touch, you know.
And real quick, what about how Ralph, he just, you know, he's the kid at heart, right? But then all of a sudden he starts like making hi-ya karate sounds and like stepping on them and like smacking them around, and then all the start to attack Ralph.
Yeah, he opens up a room full of dolls.
Yeah,
I mean they're freaking. It's from like ceiling to floor, full of dolls. Like the most dolls that you've ever seen. And he's like freaking out a little bit, like, how are we going to get out of here? There's people dying and all this stuff. And then he sees the dolls come to life and he starts freaking out and he starts going like a bull in a China chop. And Judy's like, hey, stop. What are you doing? Like, stop. These are people, like, and then they start getting him. And And like he's laying on the floor bleeding, and he's like, "Can we leave?" And she's like, "No, we have to wait. They're deciding right now if you can stay or not. If we have to stay,
they're going to kill you."
Yeah, and the doll's like, and that's just a really cool scene. And I put that GIF up there for you as well. But they're just kind of like talking it over, and then they decide you can go. And it was just
you only killed 3 of our friends. You can go.
Now, safe from the dolls, Judy and Ralph enter the workshop where the irate David finds them. This is Judy's father, and he's like, he thinks that Ralph killed his wife.
Yeah.
Because he's not going to believe, obviously, that dolls are alive and all this stuff, and he's
trying to protect his daughter too. He's like, "What are you doing next to my daughter?"
He also believes that Ralph is trying to molest his daughter.
Yeah.
So he talks about that. He's like, "You freaking pervert! You're staying in our room tonight." And Judy's like, "No, I'm not." And she runs out. It was like an ongoing theme. And then when she ran out, he was like, "Oh, okay." So don't think that the father was that like heroic or anything.
Right.
He's like, "Oh, she'll be fine." Ralph tries to explain that the dolls attacked the others for their actions, but David refuses to listen, knocking both his daughter and Ralph unconscious in his rage. But then Mr. Punch comes to life and he attacks David. Other dolls start to intervene, dragging the unconscious Ralph and Judy away to safety as Mr. Punch is destroyed by David after a fierce struggle. How about this is when you start seeing that there's some type of being inside the doll's shell?
Yes. And yeah, I read a fact on that.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to bring it up unless you did, but apparently the ones that had like skeletons were actual people,
right.
Or like they had like little alien figures inside of them.
Yeah.
Those were actual people that were transformed.
Right.
But then there were some dolls where they stepped on them or whatever, and it just looked like fairy dust or stars or something coming out of them.
Those were just toys that would come to life. Okay.
Yeah.
Those are just magical dolls, but some were people that had been there and like weary travelers that they had turned into dolls previously.
Yeah. Unless they were like a kid or good-natured, something to do with like them being a kid or a kid at heart, they wouldn't harm them.
Oh, I like
but
that.
everyone else they would turn into, especially if you're an a-hole like these other people.
I feel like they would have kept me and they probably would have killed you or turned you into a doll.
That's probably fair.
That's just how I feel.
See that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
and what about
I
Mr.
do have
Punch,
dolls.
man?
So, huh?
Yeah, that's true. What about Mr. Punch fighting the good fight, man? He was he hung in there for a minute, but he wasn't too much for a normal ass dude, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, there's really strength in numbers that you see with the dolls.
Yeah. Yeah, if it's a one-on-one fight, it's pretty one-sided.
Yeah. But yeah, I wouldn't be scared of just like when I went and watched Annabelle, I was like, oh, there's only one doll. Oh, easy.
What's the problem?
I know how this works. You need a bunch of them in order to win. No.
And hey, earlier the Madonna chick, I mean, she lit a few on fire. That seemed to work pretty good.
Yeah, Enid. Yeah.
Enid,
If there's any like thing that I would tell the Hartwicks to do is to maybe get like a fire retardant clothing for the dolls because they went up pretty quick. They went up like they were dipped in kerosene.
Or like they were made of straw.
Yeah.
I figure that's why they burn so easy.
Man, we haven't had an Almost Heroes quote in a while. Thank you for that, Chris. Yeah, I figured that's why she burned so easy. You do know that they're made of straw, right? I love that. The Hartwicks appear and explain that they are a magician couple who see toys as the heart and soul of a childhood. Gabriel and Hillary dislike the bitterness of adults, and when people seek shelter at their mansion, the dolls serve as a test for their visitors. People like Ralph, who appreciate the joy of childhood, and children like Judy were spared and leave the house with a fuller appreciation of life. However, those who refuse to change their ways, like David, Rosemary, Enid, and Isabel, can never leave, and they have to start all over and play a new role in the world as toys forever. Well, not forever, because somebody could kill you and smash you. As the Hartwicks explained this, the incredibleness yet insane and threatening David is slowly transformed into a doll, and he replaces Mr. Punch. He turns into Mr. Punch, and that was incredulous. I said I just made up a damn word for that. I was just like
incredible,
and I was like incredibleness. Like I'm getting old and I can't see that far away, and I was just like incredibleness. That thing, it was incredulous yet insane.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I just have two notes on this scene. Is I did like the transformation of David Bauer being transformed into Mr. Punch.
I enjoyed that.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Effect. And like I said, again, I never learned the plot of the story. Like, this would have never made sense with me sitting in front of it. I was just like, hey, dolls kill people. This is fun. Ooh, she turned into a doll.
Yeah. You don't have to have
But I didn't mind the story. I mean, like, it lacks a little bit, but still a pretty good overall movie, I think.
Yeah, overall, I would definitely recommend. If you're a horror fan, you gotta see Dolls. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Stuart Gordon's Dolls. There's scenes in this that are pretty iconic. That teddy bear scene, like you said, that those soldiers killing that girl, like getting shot through her chest.
And it sounds so haunting.
Oh man, yeah. And then like the guy's holding his sword and he goes, and they shoot and they just pop right there. And you're sitting there like, I wonder what these little bullets are going to do, but they're little bullets. They're not going to bounce off, or they like go through and they show the blood and everything. Yeah. I kind of liked her getting her face pummeled into the freaking, I don't know. And I loved Rosemary getting killed. So the kills were like good. You have to see that if you're a horror fan. The next morning, the next morning, the Hartwicks convinced that the reawakened Ralph and Judy that the night's events were just a dream. They were just a dream. Despite Ralph being dubious, Gabriel reads a fake letter from David explaining to Judy that he and Rosemary are changing their names and leaving the country with Enid and Isabel. Judy will be able to stay permanently with her caring mother in Boston, and that David has left Judy and Ralph enough money to buy a plane ticket to Boston. What do you think about that?
So that's really nice of David. I mean, he's just a total 180 from the previous night. I could definitely see him just leaving Judith, though. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like, you could definitely tell that he just didn't want to be with her. But
Judith was really cool with it.
Really, dude?
Yeah. You're like, man, that's messed up. Judith was really cool with it, though.
Yeah.
She was just, okay, that's fine. Yeah, I would love that. And she just goes off with Ralph, this strange man, who just drives her away from this castle.
Nobody's called the cops on like 4 missing people or anything.
Yeah. It's a horror film and it's a fairy tale all mixed in one. So you're just supposed to suspend all disbelief while watching this, by the way.
That's true.
Before leaving, Judy says goodbye, Mr. Punch, which I thought he was like, he would have said, no, keep Mr. Punch, but
keep your dad.
Keep your dad. Ralph and Judy leave the house, and as they drive away, Judy hints to him that if he would like to stay with her and her mother, he could be Judy's new father. Ralph seems to be interested in the idea. The film ends with dolls of David, Rosemary, Enid, and Isabel sitting on a shelf, while outside another car with a set of obnoxious parents gets stuck in the mud near the mansion, dragging the children out of the vehicle to head towards the building. It all starts again, Chris. It all starts again.
There's your ominous ending. Right?
Yeah, it's not a happy ending necessarily.
It's not a happy ending. And there was actually a planned sequel where Ralph and Judy's mom got married, and Gabriel and Hillary are turned into dolls and shipped to them, but it was canceled, I guess.
Oh, man. I wonder if it just didn't make enough money or something like that. If it just didn't. Or it sounds like Stuart Gordon had a lot of projects too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was entertaining it, but it just never came to pass, which I think is fine. I mean, it is what it is. It could be a standalone movie. It doesn't need to be Halloween with 3 timelines and that kind of stuff.
Dolls, 1987. We're going to put this on our classics of horror films that you have to watch. We're going to put that on the wall.